good day, good day. Welcome back to another ICA online cooking session. Today we're going to be making one of my favorite desserts. Not really a dessert, more of a sweet or a candy, which is fairly common in Europe, and it's also fairly common in Asia, although the particular nougat that you have in Asia is quite different than the one we have in Europe. So what I'm going to make today is called Nougat Montelimar. And nougat is basically a mixture of hot sugar syrup and whipped egg whites, and then there's different additives or garnishes that you can add to your nougat after. So the first thing I need to do is take some water, some sugar, just some white granulated sugar, and some glucose syrup. We're going to start to cook this over a medium to low medium heat until it reaches 147 on a thermometer. So we'll start cooking this off, okay? And the water will dissolve the sugar and the glucose, and then it'll heat up as it starts to cook. Check our temperatures, okay? I've also got here some egg whites, okay, which are going to go into a mixing bowl. I've also got some more white granulated sugar. For our garnishes, I've got some candied orange peel. I've got some whole pistachios that have been shelled. I've got some almond slivers. I've got some hazelnuts. And I've got some dried cherries, okay? And this is going to help add nice sweetness and crunchiness to our nougat. When you're doing this, make sure you're using a heat-resistant spatula or a metal or wood spoon, because the heat gets quite high, and if you're using something that is not heat-resistant, you're going to end up melting your spatula, which I've seen students do before many times. So always check to make sure it's heat resistant. As a good rule of thumb, usually red-handled spatulas are heat resistant, but that doesn't mean they're always heat resistant. Normally you can find on the handle a label right here, but it's different on every spatula. It's in a different place. You'll find a label that says what their maximum temperature is, okay? So make sure that you don't exceed that maximum temperature, or else you're going to end up with a melted spatula in whatever sugar preparation you're making, which obviously is not what you want to do, trust me. So we're going to let this come up to the boil. Like I said, I want to cook it to 147.5 Celsius, that is. Okay, we're not there yet. The other thing I have here is also a half hotel pan, but you can use any kind of container or dish you like, lined with parchment paper, so that when I put the nougat in, I can easily spread it out. If you didn't have dried cranberries, you could very easily use dried cranberries. You don't even have to use dried fruit if you don't want, but it is a very common preparation to use these things. I've also got the whisk attachment here and the paddle attachment. So after I finish whisking my egg whites to get the volume, I'll switch to the paddle attachment, just mix through my fruit, and then we're done. So give it a quick check of the temperature here. As I said, we want to go to 147.5, and we're just at 104 now, so it takes a little bit of time, and you don't want to rush this, okay? It'll come up as it comes up, so there's no rushing it, just let it come up naturally. So basically what we're gonna make here is called an Italian meringue, essentially. So an Italian meringue is where you pour a hot sugar syrup over egg whites as they whisk. Okay, there's different types of meringues. There's traditional meringue, French meringue, which is where you just whisk sugar and egg whites together and you form a glossy, shiny meringue base. Swiss meringue is where you cook the egg whites in sugar over a double boiler until the sugar is dissolved. Then you whisk it, okay, until it's cold and volumized. Then there's the Italian meringue, which is my personal favorite because it's the most stable. The Italian meringue is where you cook a sugar syrup and add that to your egg whites as they whip. So I'm just going to check my temperature again here. Temperature is very critical when you're making this dessert because depending on the temperature that you cook the sugar to will determine how hard the sugar sets after it's cooled. Okay, so in different types of candy making and different types of cooking, depending on what you're making, if you're making a hard candy, you want to cook it to a higher temperature because once it's cooled, it'll become much harder. We call that a hard crack stage. So depending on what you're cooking, you want to be accurate with your temperatures. It's very, very important when you're dealing with sugar. Another thing to remember when you're dealing with sugar is that it's very, very hot. Much hotter than boiling water. For example, boiling water is usually around about 100 Celsius. This one will cook it to 140 Celsius, more than 140 Celsius. And this isn't even as hot as you can get it. When you make dry caramel, dark caramel, it can go upwards of 180 to 200 Celsius. So you have to be careful. You don't want to get this on your skin because it will burn you and it will burn badly. Okay, it's incredibly hot. So you really want to make sure that you're careful when you're working with this product. Okay. You also want to make sure you use a candy thermometer or a very accurate thermometer. Okay, a very good quality digital thermometer would be fine. So now we're at 115. So we still have a ways to go here. You want to keep an eye on, you want to make sure that you don't burn the edges or scorch the sides. We don't really want any color on this. We just want to get the proper temperature. We're not looking for color. We're not making a caramel sauce. We're just looking to get the proper temperature so that when it meets the egg whites, it forms a proper meringue, and then it'll set when we chill it. Now the version of the meringue you have, for example, here in Taiwan is slightly less sweet, obviously because the palate difference between, the majority of palate difference between a lot of Asian countries and European or Western countries, and American, Canadian countries tend to prefer their desserts or sweets to be a little bit sweeter, whereas in Asia they prefer to have them much, much less sweet. But the fundamentals or the methodology behind making them are virtually the same. So now we're at about 120 degrees, and you'll notice that as when you mix the water, the sugar, and the glucose together, as it starts to cook, you'll see a lot of large bubbles, lots. And that's most of the water, or all the water evaporating. And now you can't really see inside the pot, but just for a reference for yourself, as you watch it cook, you'll notice the bubbles becoming smaller and tighter, and they're lasting a lot longer. That means the water has basically evaporated, and now we're just getting boiling sugar. Okay, so we're cooking this up here. Let's check the temperature again here. Still a few degrees away. Like I said, don't rush this. You really want to make sure that you get the right temperature, the right consistency, okay? Really, really important. And you'll notice that the temperature will start to increase quite exponentially. So it'll slowly get up to 100, and then slowly past 100, and then once it gets to around 120, it will sharply jump in temperature. As the water continues to evaporate, the temperature will increase quite rapidly. Okay? So you really want to keep an eye on it. It's not something you want to leave lying around. Almost there. 137. Very, very close. Just a little bit longer. Okay, so now we've reached 147.5. I'm going to add in my honey. Okay. So we add in the honey. We're going to lower the temperature a little bit here. That'll drop the temperature down. Okay, and now we want to bring it back up. We want to bring it back up to 147.5 again in order to make the nougat the proper temperature. Okay, so now that that's all mixed in, what I want to start doing at the same time now is starting to whisk my eggs, my egg whites, okay? So we're just going to whisk these up together here until they form a nice frothy base. I'm going to check out my egg mixture, my sugar mixture here again. Just about ready. Another minute or so. Once my egg whites are frothy, I'm going to sprinkle in some sugar and let that mix in. Okay, a little bit, let that mix in. A little bit more, let it mix in. So we whip our egg whites till they're frothy a little bit. Then we add in our sugar in gradual stages, and now we're going to let it whip it so it's nice and stiff and glossy. So the honey sugar syrup here now is getting very close to being done. At 136, 140, 143, 144.6. 145. All right, so now we've reached our temperature. Okay, so we've reached our target temperature. I'm just going to turn my mixer off here for a quick second, and I'm just going to scrape the sides of my bowl to make sure all that sugar's mixed in. Okay, you'll see now it's a nice soft peak, but getting very shiny. So we're going to get this going again. We're going to take our sugar syrup, we'll let this cool down for just a minute. Give it a quick stir here. This will kind of deflate the bubbles out of it a little bit. So again, like I said, you want to make sure you have a nice heat-resistant spatula. So you can see this one no problem. But I've seen before students doing the same thing, and all of a sudden their plastic spatula is gone. Okay, so now we're going to just stream this gently down the side of the bowl here, okay, on a medium to high speed. And you want to do this at a slow pace, okay? We're trying to make sure that it gets mixed in, and that the egg whites don't deflate, okay? So let it mix. Okay, so now we've got our eggs in there. However, it's very, very hot. So now what we want to do is mix this until it gets very, very chilled, okay? You can just tell by feeling the bowl that it's very hot. Keep in mind we just added extremely hot syrup in there, okay? So the bowl is going to be very, very hot. We're going to mix this for about 10 or 15 minutes. So when we come back, I'll show you how to finish this off. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. So our nougat here has been mixing for about 15 minutes. It's thickened up, it's very, very pale. And now what I want to do is add in my garnishes. So I've got here some hazelnuts, so let's put those in. I've got some slivered almonds, so those are going to go in. I've got some candied, some dried cherries, those are going to go in. Some pistachios, and also a little bit of dried candied orange peel, that's going to go in. And now just bring our mixer up here and just gently fold this all through. Just on a slow speed. Okay, it's going to be very, very sticky now, which is fine. Time is of the essence here. Once you mix this all in, you want to get it out of the mixer and into your pan so it can start to set right away. Okay, so now this is all mixed. I'm going to bring my nougat up, clean off my paddle real quickly. Show you all that nice fruit and nuts that are in there. And like I said, I've got here my prepared pan. So I'm just going to bring up my nougat here and just pour this out into my pan, my prepared pan here. And so it's very, very sticky. That's fine. So I just put some parchment paper down in here just to help keep it from sticking to my metal pan. You can also use you can also very easily just use some icing sugar. You can sprinkle a pan with icing sugar. Okay, so once we get that on, I'm just just going to use my spatula here just to press it out into a nice flat shape. You can also use a rolling pin if you want. You can fold this out onto a prepared cutting surface, like a marble board or wooden board, and then you can just roll it out between two sticks if you need. And so once this is flattened into your pan, then you're going to want to cool this overnight. Okay, so now I've got it flattened. I'm going to flatten it a little bit more using another piece of paper on top, okay, because it's starting to harden. And once it sets, then we'll cut it up. Okay, welcome back. So, if you recall, we whipped up a batch of Nougat Montelimar. And so now what we've done is let it set. Okay, so now it's hardened. So what I'm going to do is just using a knife, just using a gentle rocking motion, I'm just going to go through and cut into the nougat. Okay, and so now you can see we've got this very nice nougat here with all of our fruit and nuts in there. And then if you wanted to serve this, you could very easily just cut away from this part, okay? You want to make it look nice, and then you can cut it into small rectangles like this, okay? And then this you could wrap in wafer paper or parchment paper, depending on what you have. So there is how you make Nougat Montelimar.